Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today we're going to be talking about all the best movies and shows Netflix is adding in March 2022. So here we are, 2 months deep into 2022 already, and in March, Netflix is going to be adding a bunch of original content. We're going to spend time going through the month in this video in chronological order, talking about all the most interesting things they're going to be adding this month. But on the 1st is where they dump a bunch of familiar favorites, and here I'm going to be focusing on some of my favorite movies that they're going to be adding on the 1st. This video is brought to you by Raycon, and I'll be telling you more about them later in the video, but right now, here are my top picks out of everything they're adding on the 1st. Redemption is a hidden gem Jason Statham movie. This one slid in way under the radar because the synopsis sounds so much like everything else he does. But Redemption is actually a better drama movie than this genre typically is. You still get him fighting a lot of guys in this movie, but not a ton. And there is a better story in Redemption than you normally get in this genre. So if you're ever a fan of his, like any of the action movies he does, Redemption is an exceptional one. They're also going to be adding 21, which is a decent PG-13 sort of thriller movie involving these MIT students that figure out how to cheat at cards. And as PG-13 thrillers go, this one's pretty decent. They're also going to be adding Top Gun, which could be a good time to watch it. They will one day release the new Top Gun, which looks like it could actually be a pretty excellent movie. I will say I've watched Top Gun in recent years, and while it is a fun nostalgia watch, it doesn't hold up as well as you would think, even though it does still have some good moments in it. They're also going to be adding Richie Rich. Not a great movie, but a fun, again, nostalgic one to watch with the family. Believe it or not, I actually recommend Battleship. Now, this falls into the same category as the Transformers movies and things like that, but the reason I really like Battleship, or like it more than most in this genre, is it's really more self-aware than I think a lot of people would have realized. If you passed on this one thinking it was just another run-of-the-mill thing, you weren't 100% wrong, but you weren't 100% right either. Where the Wild Things Are is a beautiful movie. It's directed by Spike Jonze, and while it seems like it's a movie for kids, this is really a movie for adults. Now, it is rated PG. It's definitely family friendly, especially if you have slightly older kids, but my 6-year-old really enjoyed the movie. However, the themes and stories are geared towards adults. I mean, it's about childhood, but from the perspective of someone who's no longer a child. I think that's really who this movie is for. So I highly recommend it, but you're gonna wanna pay closer attention to this one than I think your kids will. They're also gonna be adding The Nightmare on Elm Street, yes, the 1984 version, and yes, the 2010 version that, while it's not a terrible movie, it's really not a good representation of A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you want the real deal, you gotta go with the 1984 version. V for Vendetta comes back to Netflix. It's one I highly recommend, but it seems to be on Netflix for 6 months, then it leaves for 6. It's back again if it's been a while since you've seen it. And then a comedy that I have not seen in years that used to leave me in stitches is Zoolander. I realize the humor is not for everyone, but I'm a big fan of what Ben Stiller did with this movie. Wasn't a big fan of the second one, but there's so many great moments and cameos in this movie that make it really fun. If it's been a while since you've seen Zoolander, it's probably funnier than you remember, especially if you laughed at all the first time you saw it.
How can children learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
And then one of the more interesting, newer releases that they're adding is Sorry to Bother You. Now, I've talked about this one quite a bit on the channel because it used to be on Hulu and some other platforms. It's coming to Netflix. This is one of the cooler, funkier things I've seen in a really long time. Now, it is not for everyone. This one goes in some really weird directions, but it's got a lot of style to it, and all of the style works in this one. I cannot go into details as to what this one is about, but if you like really bizarre movies, then Sorry to Bother You is definitely gonna be for you. Last month, they added my least favorite Michael Mann movie, Black Hat, even though I still recommended that movie, but this month they're adding a much better one with Public Enemies. Not only was this one of Michael Mann's last really good movies, it's also one of Johnny Depp's last really good movies. In this movie, he plays John Dillinger, and not only does he do a good job, but the entire production does a really good job of putting you in this time period. They also filmed a prison escape John Dillinger is extremely famous for. In the prison he actually escaped from, tried to make it look as authentic as possible, and they carried that over with a shootout and a whole bunch of other things, including the assassination, I guess we can call, of John Dillinger. So a very historically accurate movie, but also just a good movie in its own right. Starship Troopers is a classic that is well worth rewatching whenever you get the chance. If it's been a while since you've seen it, I highly recommend revisiting this classic satire space flick. Now obviously it's filled with all kinds of crazy stuff like giant bugs and warfare and all this stuff, but it's got an interesting story, and I think it's one of Paul Verhoeven's better movies. I would put it up there with movies like RoboCop. I think it's really excellent, and obviously it spawned some sequels and things like that, but the original, again, is the real deal. Now, if that's not your brand of sci-fi, or even if it is, they're adding something on the other end of the sci-fi spectrum with Gattaca. This is another classic starring Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, and also Jude Law, but it's brilliantly written, it's beautifully shot, it's got great cinematography, and there's a really good message at its core and a good story. If you've never seen Gattaca, it is a sci-fi classic and is a must-watch this month. And then before I show you everything else getting added on the first, my top picks include actually 2 movies based on the writings of Stephen King: The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption. Now, while The Shawshank Redemption is a fantastic movie, TNT burned this movie out for me. I mean, I know it by heart, I've seen it enough times that I've really got no interest in watching it on Netflix. However, it is still fantastic. And then I have not seen The Green Mile in quite a while. I really do enjoy this movie. It's got a bunch of great moments in it, obviously a bunch of great performances, and then like an early Sam Rockwell performance and one of his wildest. In case you forgot, he was in that movie as well. I mean, just really great stuff. If it's been a while since you've seen that one, there's probably a bunch of fantastic scenes you've completely forgotten about. But here is everything else that they're adding on the first. There is some good stuff here, but I wanted to take some time to talk about my absolute top picks. And then they don't add Netflix originals on the first very often, but they are going to be adding The Guardians of Justice, which is a very interesting looking show. As you can tell, it looks wild and campy and kind of crazy. The cast actually includes Denise Richards, Andy Milonakis, and Diamond Dallas Page. If the footage of this looks the least bit interesting to you, you're gonna want to at least check out the first episode. Now, before moving on with the rest of the month, including all the new Netflix original stuff they're going to be adding, I do need to tell you about today's sponsor, Raycon. Now, the folks over at Raycon were nice enough to send me a brand new pair of Raycon earbuds, and I love them. Not only do I love the sound of them, they're comfortable, they stay in my ears, but more importantly, they've changed the way I do a lot of things. For instance, doing the dishes now with these babies in is an enjoyable experience, and with their special awareness mode, I can actually hear what's going on around me. I know usually you want your earbuds to drown sound out. These do that too, but awareness mode lets me hear my kids in the background, so I'm not completely drowning the world out. I know what's going on around me, and I can jam out while I'm doing the dishes and other chores around the house. And the ones I have in here are the everyday earbuds. They've got a couple different models to choose from. They actually boast that these have an 8-hour battery life with 32 hours total in this charging case, which I love the charging case because I just pop them out, put my earbuds back in there, and then I know they're gonna have a full charge the next time I pick them up. And Raycon's everyday earbuds already have over 48,000 5-star reviews. But most importantly for earbuds, they sound great. They really do. The music just sounds incredible. The podcasts are nice and clear. And then second to that, and it's a big second to that, they start off at half the price of other premium brands, and they are not half the quality, not even by a long shot. And I mean, like I said, they're fit, they're comfortable, but they do not fall out either, no matter what you do. So just follow the link in the description below, or go to buyraycon.com/flickconnection, and you're gonna save 15% off, which is a great deal because these things are already incredibly competitively priced. Follow the link, go get yourself a pair. They got a bunch of cool colors over there. It really is one of the coolest things somebody has sent me in quite a while, but let's move on with the rest of everything coming to Netflix this month. On March 2nd, they're gonna be adding a new Netflix original, Against the Ice. Jamie Lannister actually stars in this, and it is a survival adventure story. It's actually based on a true story about a couple of men that get left behind during an expedition in Denmark, and they have to work their way home. I love movies from this survival genre, and this looks like an exceptional one. March 3rd brings a nature documentary called Surviving Paradise, a family tale. While I think they may show other animals and things, it looks like there's a core story of a family of elephants trying to survive in Africa. I love the nature documentaries Netflix puts out, but with this one having more of a story-driven thing, it's got my interest more than others. The Weekend Away looks like a pretty good made-for-TV thriller movie, meaning this is not one that I would get hyped to go see in the theater, but for a Netflix release, it looks like there's some interesting stuff with this one. Doesn't look like a hard-hitting thriller. It looks like it might be a little bit on the light side for my taste, but it does look like it's loosely based on some actual events, so there could be some good stuff going on here. March 4th brings Pieces of Her, a new movie starring Toni Collette that looks like a pretty exceptional thriller. In fact, it looks kind of like The Long Kiss Goodnight. It looks as if she might be someone different than she appears to be. I mean, those femme fatale movies are kind of a dime a dozen. However, Pieces of Her seems like it takes a more serious approach, a more realistic approach, and it might have some heavier themes to it as well. And Toni Collette is always fantastic, so for her to have wanted to do this project, there's got to be something good behind it. On the 5th, they add Beirut, which is a really good thriller set in the 1980s, starring John Hamm and Rosamund Pike. If you like international intrigue type stuff, Beirut is going to be one of the better things added this month for you. And then on the 8th, they add Chip and Potatoes Season 3. I stopped to mention that because both of my kids love this show. It's nice, it's lighthearted, it's got some good lessons. If you've got young kids like me, again, mine are 4 and 6, they love this show, and it's one of the better shows for their age groups on Netflix right now. On the 9th, they add the Andy Warhol Diaries, which sounds interesting. I mean, I did study art history in college, so I know a fair amount about Andy Warhol, so it'd be interesting to take a deeper dive. However, he is an odd character, so if you don't already have some pre-existing interest in Andy Warhol, this particular documentary looks like it may not have a ton of intrigue for you, but if you're interested in anything Andy Warhol, this is probably at the very least got some really good stories hidden in it. Also on the 9th, they're going to be adding The Last Kingdom Season 5. I personally have not been able to start watching this show because there's so much, but I've heard amazing things. But if you've been watching it, Season 5 is already here, and you've got time to catch up on Seasons 1 through 4, which are also on Netflix right now. Then on the 11th, they're adding one of the bigger movies of the month, The Adam Project. This is the latest Ryan Reynolds Netflix flick, and it looks pretty interesting. You may remember Bruce Willis did a movie years back called The Kid, where he visits his younger self. Well, The Adam Project does the same thing, except there's action and sci-fi elements all over the place. So this looks like it could be a good family watch. At the very least, I've enjoyed everything Ryan Reynolds has put on Netflix. Even if I didn't love it, I've at least enjoyed the other movies he's taken part in, and so far, I've heard nothing but good things about The Adam Project. And then on the 12th, they're adding what is easily one of the best movies that's going to be on Netflix, and that is Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. This is one of the best World War II movies to have come out since Saving Private Ryan. The only thing that really sort of neuters this movie is its PG-13 rating. It is not quite the realistic depiction of war that you would want, even though so many of the other elements in it are very real. The boats are period, the planes are period. Everything on camera, for the most part, is actually happening in camera. There's not a lot of digital effects added to Dunkirk, and that level of realism makes this movie work. Story-wise, it gets a little bit muddled, but that really comes with the territory when it comes to Christopher Nolan. And even if it is muddled, it's beautifully told. It got incredible cinematography and some really stunning moments in it. If you've never bothered to watch it, I don't know what you're waiting for, but March 12th is your day. It's easily one of the best things you could possibly watch on Netflix that day. And then for something else with a lot of action that is just completely different. London Has Fallen. This is the sequel to Olympus Has Fallen. You may remember back when that movie came out, there was another White House action movie starring Jamie Foxx and Channing Tatum. However, the Gerard Butler ones, they've made 3 of them now, and they're all pretty decent because they lean a little bit harder into the silly action. In fact, increasingly so as the trilogy continued. London Has Fallen is just over the top, the plot is a little silly, yet the movie, like I said, it leans into it, it's self-aware enough that you can kind of suspend all disbelief for a bit and have a lot of fun with London Has Fallen, even if it is kind of crazy. The 16th adds Bad Vegan, which is a docu-series that is probably going to be one people are talking about that week or for the rest of the month. This is the story of a famous New York vegan restaurateur that got sucked into this wild world of crime and meat suits.
What is the meat suit? Oh no. What's the meat suit?
So yeah, I'm going to be checking that one out. I imagine a lot of other people are. It's going to be the water cooler show of the month. And if that's not for you, they're also going to be adding A Walk Among the Tombstones, which is a decent Liam Neeson action flick. So many of those feel so similar to one another. However, A Walk Among the Tombstones has a slightly darker edge than you normally get out of those Liam Neeson flicks. It's one of the better ones he's done since Taken. Maybe not the best, but one of them. They're also going to be adding Lee Daniels' The Butler, which would have been great to watch during Black History Month, but Netflix always buys stuff up after they're relevant for some reason. And then the 18th adds a foreign language flick that is a top pick for me. I have not seen it, but it looks like one of the more interesting projects of the month. It's called Black Crab. It stars Noomi Rapace. It will be subtitled, but typically with these bigger budget movies, Netflix actually releases really good dubbed versions. So at least check this one out and see if they have a dubbed version if you don't do subtitles. But this takes place in a frozen post-apocalyptic landscape, including this big archipelago that is frozen over. So you've got these soldiers that have to cross this ice, and it looks like there's a lot of wild stuff going on in this movie. I may be overinflating this a little bit. It might not quite be as good as it looks, but still, Noomi Rapace is always fantastic, and everything about this one has me interested. Human Resources is a new animated series, definitely for adults. This is a spin-off of Big Mouth, so if you were a fan of that show, this looks even crazier to me. And then WINFALL is a very interesting one. In this, you've got Jesse Plemons, Lily Collins, and Jason Segel, in almost something kind of like The Ref with Dennis Leary. Jason Segel looks to take this rich couple hostage in exchange for money, and it delves into a pretty intense drama. Everyone on screen is a fantastic actor, especially Jesse Plemons, but Jason Segel has really come a long way in recent years, doing a wide variety of roles in smaller movies, so I'm very interested to see what he brings to the table here as well. On the 22nd, they add a brand new Jeff Foxworthy special. I have not seen him do stand-up in a really long time. He is a fantastic stand-up. If you think he only does the redneck jokes, do yourself a favor and check out his stuff, because there's a reason he's one of the wealthiest stand-up comedians in the world. Don't believe me? Look it up. The 25th adds Bridgerton Season 2. I did not bother watching Season 1, however, I'm well aware that this was kind of a cultural phenomenon, so if you've been patiently awaiting Season 2, here's your ticket on the 25th. And then one of my personal favorite movies to have come out easily in the last 10 years is Blade Runner 2049. They're going to be adding that on the 26th. So this is an amazing movie on a bunch of different levels. The first one just being the cinematography. This was done by Roger Deakins, who is easily one of the best cinematographers working in Hollywood today, and it shows. It's one of Ryan Gosling's best performances. In fact, years ago when this channel was very, very young, I did a video about how this is essentially a retelling of Pinocchio. So if it's your first time watching it, know that I highly recommend this movie. If you've seen it before, consider rewatching it knowing that it is based on Pinocchio and it may be an entirely different viewing experience. I'll actually link to that video in the video description down below. They're also going to be adding the Imitation game, which was a fantastic movie about one of the creators of the first computers. The only reason I put it that way is because there's other people doing things similar in the world at similar times, but this is a very, very good story about this giant computer, or at least the closest thing to what we call a computer today, that was invented to help break the Germans' codes and really played a key role in shifting the tide of World War II. So it's an important story, but also it's really well told, really well acted by Benedict Cumberbatch. It's fantastic stuff, even if it is a little bit slow and dry for a World War II drama. And then on the 30th, they're adding Trust No One, The Hunt for the Crypto King. This is another Netflix docu-series that follows sort of an international crime. Think Don't F with Cats, The Tinder Swindler. So if you've been digging those, mark your calendar for March 30th, but you may also want to mark your calendar for all the things leaving Netflix this month. Here is the full list of everything leaving. If you're new here, please note the date listed is not the last day you can watch it. It is gone on that date. So if you're gonna mark your calendar, mark it before the date listed. I have marked some of my favorites out of this list in bold. If you need more time, pause the screen, but make sure to watch those before they're gone. Be sure to go check out that Raycon link in the video description. Supporting our sponsors is a great way to support the channel. You can also go check out my new website, DarrenVanDam.com, and sign up for my free newsletter. I'm going to be emailing everyone a list of movie recommendations every single week at absolutely no charge, and I'm not giving your information away to anyone. Just like the channel, I manage all of this stuff myself, but I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Netflix list, and you will see me on the next one.